mean, Paul Allen's calling me. Hey, this guy's vocal maintenance. I thought he wasn't going to use his voice all day.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's still locked in.
Yeah. I mean, he's providing feedback. He is like a coach. I mean, he's a quarterback developer, to be honest.
Yeah, right. You're a young prospect. He's the KOC of radio hosts.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a host whisperer.
100%. And I'm looking at some of these texts. I mean, way too nice, honestly. Everybody that has chimed in about what we've been able to do over the first hour.
And that's not usually how it is. So if you got to take that for what it is, because people are usually pretty ruthless on the text line. So if you're getting good reviews, that means you're doing good.
That's fine. But I kind of think I'm skeptical. I think you're putting the comments. For people who don't know, you got this like computer screen up here, and Max can pin comments, text to the top, and some of them are so nice at the top. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's just me downloading different free texting apps. Like Alec is great, and by the way, Max is really handsome.
No question. So Max is not only carrying me through these segments, but he's also upping my confidence. I mean, it's everything you want. No, I thought Robert was phenomenal. He was really good. We're gonna bring in Dan Hayes, hopefully. Soon we'll talk Twins. And Dan, I've known for a long time. Dan covers the Twins for The Athletic. Dan, can you hear me?
I can, and I'm here to bring the show down. This is the part where the texts come in bad. So.
Dan, no, not at all. Where are you? You still in Kansas City? The Twins played there this weekend, from what I heard.
In Chicago for the night.
Okay,
we go to Milwaukee tomorrow, so I stopped at home I get 2 nights at home out of this and drive up tomorrow morning. So it's a good deal.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm Alec Lewis. I'm in for Paul Allen today, hosting alongside Max Fuller. We have Dan Hayes, who covers the Twins for The Athletic. His nickname is Disco Danny. Dan, what is the backstory behind that?
Honestly, I don't think there's anything really. A talk show host in San Diego just started calling me that one day, and then their baseball analyst Mark Grant, who's on the Padres broadcast. He picked up on it. He heard it, and it stuck with me. But it had disappeared for a little while.
Really?
Like, this nickname had probably disappeared for a decade. And then we were at the winter meetings last year in San Diego, and John Cantera is the radio host who he was on the middle of his broadcast. He sees me across the room, and this is the final day, and I'm just walking with Do Young Park and Betsy Helfand from the Twins beat, and John gets off the air, and he yells out across the room, and he's got a loud booming voice. He's like, "Disco Danny Hayes, get over here!" And so the name was revived at that point, and it's never been a bad one. I don't have a problem with it. It just kind of disappeared because that was so long ago that I covered the Padres.
Sure. I got an afro. I sport the fro, and I've been sporting the fro for a while. And it's starting to be summer. It gets really hot with the afro. So if you want to borrow some and really take the moniker to the next level, I got you, Dan.
Hey, when you get to those mid-40s, I could borrow. I could use a little extra hairline, so I'm good with that for sure.
Dan, I covered the Royals for 3 years. You know this. How was Kauffman Stadium? How was the opening series? Just some initial thoughts. Provide them, please. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, one, it's all when it's full there. It's actually kind of fun. And Saturday was less full, but it was Twins fans, and they were really loud.
Wow.
So, there was a good atmosphere all weekend. The Royals, that lineup is really improved. Bobby Witt looks, from the second half of last year, starting about then to now, has been incredible. He's a legitimate MVP candidate in my mind. He really and he really loves facing the Twins. He has owned them probably since July. He's just so dynamic. The speed, the power, and what it is that he's finally recognizing how to use the talent. It's been incredible so far. So you throw him in there, having Pasquantino back, that's a huge difference maker for that lineup.
Yeah.
And they get some pieces around them. I still think there's holes with the lineup. Obviously, it's hard to do 1 through 9 when you don't have the budget that they spent a little this year, but a lot of it went to Witt. But I mean, they're getting there.
Sure.
And for the fact that they were able to throw out the group they did in the rotation early on, Singer's not going to look like that. We've seen plenty of evidence, but that was a very encouraging start for him yesterday. But the first 2 days, you have changed that rotation quite a bit, and it looks a lot deeper. It's just, he gets the bullpen, and we're looking at the 7th, 8th inning of tight games the first 2 days. And my first thought was, that's who's going to be throwing right here. That's not a very good, that's not a great option. Yeah. So there's still some holes. They're getting better. And, it seems like Royals fans, maybe you're picking up on it. Opening day was fun. It was loud. But the crowds were less and less as the weekend went along. And I think it was 17,000 yesterday. So you would hope for more, but at the same time, they're not going to be the pushovers they were last year as long as they stay healthy.
Yeah. No question. I don't want to be a downer because it's not who I am. People listening know I'm like always positive. But when I saw the Royce Lewis news, I mean, first I was bummed because like he's electric and is a guy who will get me to watch baseball. Having seen 300 games over 3 years, I don't watch it much, but I will watch for Royce Lewis. And then I see he's hurt. Like, how the heck? How does this keep happening to the Twins and just won't
I know.
Set the scene for me? You're in the press box. You see this happen. You know the work that he did this offseason. Like, what is going through your head and where do things stand right now with this?
I mean, think about this. We're not talking about just Royce Lewis and Byron Buxton. Justin Morneau gets a knee to the head concussion, serious concussion. Joe Mauer takes a foul ball off the helmet, serious concussion. We're going back over a decade where the star players just keep getting hurt. Brutal. I'm sure, I don't, obviously not being from the area, I don't have the decades-long knowledge, but I'm sure people can continue to point to other injuries that have occurred over the decades. But I mean, it's some really crazy freak stuff. And Royce Lewis, this is the part where having empathy as a sports writer really helps because, you see a lot of fans get frustrated and how does this keep happening and get angry and sad. And it's like, you just feel for the kid because so much work went into this off season. They were thrilled with the leg work that he specifically did to strengthen all his tendons. They devised this plan and then they take it to Scott Boras, and what that entails because Scott Boras, the science of baseball basically has been run through Scott Boras's camp because they have so many billions of dollars and players invested out there, and
they have a whole team. I mean, they have Scott Boras has
a medical team that has to approve this, and then he has to, he has to approve it. So everybody thought the program was really solid, and here we are the first day, and hurts the knee the quad rounding the base. He was actually thrilled, and he's so it's uncanny. He is the most positive guy ever. I visited him the first time he blew out his ACL in Fort Myers, and it's August and it's miserable. And he's like, "Nope, I'm fine. I'm going to be a major leaguer. I know I'm going to be a major leaguer." That was August 21. And every time he just looks for the silver lining, and his silver lining this time was, it's not the knee. At least it's not season-ending surgery. I'll be back. This is nothing, but it is something. I mean, we're talking about Royce Lewis returned home yesterday, and he's going to sit for a month. There's no baseball activity. Just sit for a month, and let's see where the quad is at that point. And they use the word severe and significant in describing it.
Man.
So it's a big move. Or it's a big injury. I wouldn't be shocked if this was an 8-week injury at minimum, and maybe a little more. But like he said, that's not the season. That puts him back in the middle of summer. And he's hopeful about that because when he is on the field, he's electric. We see it with Byron Buxton and the things he's doing right now. He does things that very few players can do when he's healthy. Royce Lewis does some amazing things. Just his ability to step up in the moment. If there is a clutch gene, he has more of it than 10 people combined. And it just never ceases to amaze you. The home run, the first at bat of the season, the home run, the first at bat of the playoffs. I think I added it up. It's between the playoffs and the regular season, 308 plate appearances, 26 home runs. It's that is every 11.8 plate appearances. That's some Ruthian stuff. That is
wow.
And he just keeps doing it, and then he gets hurt, and it's very sad to see because he's a special person along with the player.
Alec Lewis filling in for 9 to noon along with myself, Max Fuller, talking to Dan Hayes, the Twins writer over at The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter /X at Dan Hayes MLB. Follow him as 9 to noon does. I mean, adding to the Royce Lewis thing, somebody that would usually probably come up and fill his spot, Brooks Lee, is also dealing with injury, so just another injury that the Twins have to deal with. But my question is more so because obviously we all know Royce Lewis was the breakout star of the Twins last year. He's, rapidly become the face of the franchise. Who do you think has the potential to be the Royce Lewis for the Twins this year?
I mean, I'm just going to say that as long as Byron Buxton's out there, that's going to cover them. And we know the injury history, but I don't know that who comes up and is the new Royce Lewis. I don't know that you can replicate that. And they can fill it, and Brooks Lee is a good player. And Brooks Lee could come up and have a great summer, but, he's weeks away. And the back, it was called spasms, then we heard strain this weekend. So there's something going on there that they're making sure to knock out, especially it's April. Look at these temperatures that the Saints are in right now. That's not the kind of weather you want to bring a guy out and have a bad back in and play baseball. So they're going to be very careful with him. For now, that would be my pick. They're going to have to rely on the group they have. And I still think they have a really good, dangerous group, especially because of the way they platoon. They play to guys' strengths, and Kyle Farmer really hits left-handed pitching well. Willie Castro hits righties well. They'll kind of balance them out at third base. They'll do the same thing at second base with Edward Julian, and he has a chance to be, if Royce Lewis hadn't had the kind of year he had last year, everybody in baseball would be raving about Edward Julian, and to some extent they are, because his profile as far as balls and strikes is pretty unique and incredible, and he mixes in some power. So I really think that if there's a part of the team that can absorb a loss to a major player like Royce Lewis, it is the position side. Last year, I would have said that about the starting pitching side. Their depth was incredible. And this year, their starting pitching is thin. The depth there is going to be tested early, and it's the biggest question surrounding this team. But position-wise, they are better suited to handle Royce Lewis at this point because you have healthy Byron Buxton. Carlos Correa looks amazing so far. Like, he just looks healthy. He's running hard. Julian's back. They need to get Matt Wallner going, but there are so many different offensive guys that can come in and change a game with a home run, that they can maybe absorb Royce Lewis better, but there's no question how much better they are when he is in the lineup.
Dan, you cool sticking around for another segment? I got some more pitching questions. I'm a nerd for pitching.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Dan.
This is Alec Lewis and Max Fuller, 9 to noon. We'll be back on The Fan right after this. Your Minnesota Timberwolves are on the road to the playoffs, and you could be there for every electrifying moment. Head over to our contest page and find out how you can join their playoff priority access and register for a chance to win a grand prize of tickets to every home Timberwolves game for the 2024 NBA playoffs. That's KFAN.com, keyword contest to enter.
Good morning. My name's Alec Lewis. I'm in for Paul Allen. It is 9 to noon. This is his show. He hosts with Nordo. I don't know why I'm here. It's an April Fool's joke. I'm hosting with Max Fuller. We have Dan Hayes, the Twins beat writer at The Athletic, with us right now, just peppering him on baseball stuff because he knows it way better than I have ever or will ever. Dan, so they won 4-1 on opening day, then 5-1, and then yesterday was abysmal. Bailey Ober, I think, went 1 1/3, gave up 8 earned runs, if I have that right. I mean, I imagine after he either said he was tipping or he just didn't have his stuff. I mean, I what happened yesterday, and should this be a concern to us?
No, I don't think it's a concern because it's a concern when they face the Royals because Bailey Ober now has a 7.24 ERA against the Royals in 8 starts.
That's not good.
No, the rest of the league, it's 3.44, and that's over 50 starts. And, Bailey Ober's been a good pitcher for them. He had a 3.43 ERA. This is a hiccup. They got to figure out a better game plan for the Royals, though, with him. They were 9 for 13 yesterday. Going into yesterday, the Royals were hitting like 346 with like a 530 slugging percentage against him in 80 plate appearances. It's like batting practice. It looked like it yesterday. I thought the pitch to Salvador Perez was pretty good, but Ryan Jeffers said maybe a little bit lower because Salvi's in swing mode there, but it was low and away with the changeup. That's not Salvi's zone, and he still hit it out because he's Salvi Perez, and because it's the Twins. This is the guy that now is the active player with the most home runs against the Twins. And I promise you, every fan remembers every single one of them because they all seem to be backbreaking. But I think, the biggest question with the rotation really is going to be Louis Varland, who I like a lot. But we saw last year that if he didn't have, he needed more of a weapon to right-handed hitters. Mm-hmm. Right-handed hitters were teeing off on him when he was a starter. It didn't matter as much when he was in the bullpen because his stuff played up and was electric with the being able to throw 100 and throw a cutter. I mean, he was just nasty out of the bullpen. And
that'll play.
And it will. And, the Twins know they have that in their pocket, that if he's not a starter in the long run, he can be a really good reliever. And I don't think they would hesitate to do it, but they're going to test him out as a starter because, that's what you should do. You should give him that shot. And he's worked hard on a two-seam fastball. If that works for him, if he can get that consistent, and at the start of spring, guys were saying that it was a decent pitch, but it needed refinement. But if that can work, he's got enough stuff to get by and be a good starting pitcher. He's young. It's a big question, and it's one of the questions they are facing because they didn't bring back one of or both of Sonny Gray and Kenta Maeda. And it's got to be their biggest question all year because they traded for Anthony DeSclafani, and on Friday he went into Dr. Keith Meister, which is never encouraging in the first place, and he had the surgery, a flexor mass. It wasn't the ACL. It wasn't Tommy John.
Sure. His
UCL was intact and actually apparently looks good, but he had flexor mass. He is 13 months on the sideline, so the Twins, they took a flyer. They only paid $4 million of his $12 million salary to bring him over in the Jorge Polanco trade. He was hardly the centerpiece of that. I think Justin Topa, Gabriel Gonzalez, and the fact that the Twins freed up money to go spend elsewhere is what sort of the motivations were there. And they basically turned that into Carlos Santana as well. So, they knew that DeSclafani might be a question mark, and it turned out he is. So, they will face some serious starting pitching questions all season long.
Sticking with pitching, Ober was kind of the only one on the Twins rotation that struggled with the Royals. Pablo Lopez had a great opening day game, and Joe Ryan in the second game did 5 1/3, 5 strikeouts, 1 earned run. How is Joe Ryan? Because obviously we all know where Pablo is. He's the Twins' ace. Joe Ryan is now slotted with the absence of Sonny Gray. He's slotted into that kind of number 2 spot. What has Joe Ryan worked on in the offseason? How has he evolved? And where do you see him? Where is his ceiling this season?
Yeah, I'm going to actually have a story later this week with Eno Saris, who's like our super nerd guy and an awesome guy about Joe Ryan and the work he put in. Because he went to Driveline. Everybody went to Driveline. It's sort of like a married guy going to Jared. He went to Jared. Well, he went to Driveline is like baseball.
Pretty good,
he went
Dan.
to Jared.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
And he went because he lost his split fastball last year. He can pinpoint the start he lost it. He lost it at the end of May against Houston. And that's because they were trying to throw a slider. And he said, basically, I got confused on the grip between the two. So he loses his second best pitch at that point. Through his first 10 starts, 61 innings, 4 home runs allowed.
Wow.
Through the rest of the season, 101/3 innings, 28 home runs allowed. So he went from a guy with a very good fastball and okay secondary stuff and really excelling and looking like an all-star to a very hittable pitcher because hitters could just sit on the fastball. And as hard as it is to hit fastballs that are up in the zone out, guys have trained themselves to do it. They've gotten so much better at it. And then when it's predictable, you look for it. And he still got a ton of strikeouts working primarily with just a fastball working, but he needed other stuff to start kicking in. And now he's got the splitter. He has a 2-seam. He's refound the splitter. He's got a different slider. It's the one he was throwing in 2022. He just altered it a little bit, and that was something he did at Driveline. And, looking at the numbers there today, he was throwing all of those secondary pitches harder. It was like 3 miles an hour to 4.6 miles an hour on average harder than it was last year. That's really critical for him. And he felt it, and you could see it. He was just breaking guys. That splitter was so key for him. He was just getting guys to swing over the top of it in critical spots all day, and looked very sharp. It's encouraging, but it's early, and being able to throw hard early is easy. Being able to throw harder in July when your body is starting to feel it is not quite the same, and he's got to strive for that consistency with that, and that'll be a difference maker, because if Joe Ryan is really on, man, we saw it last year, end of June, he looked like an all-star, and then it melted down and was the guy that they only let pitch 2 innings in the final playoff game of the season. So it is a big question for them, and an encouraging first start, but lots to prove there.
Dan, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I remember Joe Ryan when I covered the Royals from 2019 to 22. I think it was a game in 2022 early. He shut down the Royals, and I mean that's not hard to do. Sorry for Royals, but it just wasn't hard to do. But I remember talking to Whit Merrifield, who I had been an incredibly consistent hitter, 300 average year after year. Had a great eye. I remember asking him what makes this guy so tough? Is the fastball like one of those invisible rise balls? And that he was like, yeah, he has that, but he was explaining to me how Joe Ryan's, apparently you couldn't see his hand until at the last second. You saw his elbow, and then all of a sudden the ball just shot out from nowhere. And I thought that was so interesting. And I mean, I don't know. I imagine Eno has numbers to objectify that thing, but it was very interesting. So I've been fascinated with him since that, and just enjoy watching him. And the other thing I'll say is, you were talking about Bailey Ober and the Royals having success. I mean, the Royals in baseball in general, and you touched on this just now, baseball has transitioned to a place where they simulate the opposing pitcher that they're going to face before every game at such a high level that I think you can adapt to a high release point or a low release point. And again, as you can hear me talk about it, you probably hear how fascinated I am with all of that stuff. But those two things to me are interesting. I laughed in about sample size in baseball because I used to wait 10 games to write something definitive, and 10 games in baseball is literally one NFL game. So it's crazy. But how do you feel? I mean, obviously the Royce Lewis injury is very tough, but just how do you feel about the division as a whole and where the Twins sit in the mix, just as we get going here?
Well, look, it's funny because all 3 teams in the division that have the potential to be better played terrible teams this week. The Tigers opened with the White Sox, which might as well be Double-A baseball.
Yeah.
Granted, they added some really good defenders up the middle, but Nicky Lopez and Paul DeJong are on the White Sox for a reason. At this point, they're just not hitters. They've never hit ever. They're glove first guys. The rotation is ugly. So I don't know what to make of Detroit beating up on the White Sox. And Cleveland went to Oakland and they took 3 or 4 there. And I don't know what to make of that because Oakland probably should be a single-A team. And, the Royals are a good, solid AAA plus at this point. It's the bottom of the division is not great. It hasn't been for some time. So it's hard to say. Because Cleveland's not going to score. Cleveland scored 12 one day this weekend. I think it was Saturday. And I was like, is that their cumulative for the month? Because Cleveland's offense is just perennially terrible. It's just a bad group, always has been. They can't get it fixed. And yet they have all the pitching in the world, right? They always find another Tristan McKenzie. They're just incredible at that. But they're definitely always somebody to be worried about. And the Tigers spent a little bit more money in their rotation. They lose Rodriguez, but they went out and added other guys. And I think that the Tigers are definitely more formidable. But I still think this is the Twins division. I think I've thought that since the start. And I do think if they have starting pitching issues and they're drawing, that they will go out and address it. I don't think that they will shy away from it. If their attendance is the same or better than last year, I think the money is there to go out. I don't know that means like going out and getting Justin Verlander, prime Justin Verlander kind of thing. But I do think that they can go out and address the rotation a little bit more. They also have very high expectations for Chris Paddock, and we won't see him till Wednesday at Milwaukee, but they really believe that he is going to jump up and provide, with the caveat being that it's going to be about 120 innings in the regular season, but they think that he can provide Sonny Gray type quality because he was already a strike thrower. They've encouraged him to use his slider or cutter more this year. He only throws it a little bit, and I think he's thrown it like 50-something times the last 3 years. It's really a minimal amount, but they basically told him, hey, if you expand to this zone, you're going to get way more strikeouts. And he's a guy that doesn't walk people, so they're actually trying to teach him to be a little bit more open to throwing a ball here or there. Like not being so worried about throwing strikes all the time and putting the ball in play. They want him to pitch for strikeouts, and they have some big thoughts that Paddock can be that guy because he just looks fantastic. So I think that's something people will maybe be surprised about when he comes out and looks good, that he will be a really solid number 5, just with limitations on how many innings he can go. And hey, to the one point you made there about teams preparing for, it's in my notes somewhere. I haven't been in camp for a little bit, but the Twins have a machine. It's $1 million, at least $1 million. And it shows a screen that has the pitcher on it, and the release point can be maneuvered to any pitcher. Like there was a day in camp where LaTroy Hawkins faced the version of himself. They were able to go back and find LaTroy Hawkins.
Yeah, it's like AI or something.
What? Yeah. This is insane.
And he can stand in against himself. And he was like, man, I don't think that's accurate. I think my stuff is nastier. But it was great, because, yes, they can stand in against Bailey Ober. And no, not every team has this, and that's a really big investment. The Twins probably are one of 5 to 10 teams that went out and spent $1 million, but guys benefit from it. They love it. And, if you're going to see a certain reliever and you're on the bench and you're going to get pinch hit to face that reliever, you can sit there and watch that pitcher for 20 minutes and take swings against it. And, I'm sure that helps a lot with the way that there are so many relievers out there that we just, you know them a little bit, but maybe you only see that team once a year, and you can sit in the box and get comfortable. And it's a pretty incredible kind of preparation tool.
The dichotomy between the human element and the advance of technology in baseball is just utterly fascinating to me.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, Dan just said he's doing a story later this week with Eno Saris. I mean, Eno is like a calculator human. It's got talk about vertical pitch spin. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Dan, it'll totally go over my head. I'm letting him touch his part of it, and I'm just gonna be like, yeah, that looks good.
yeah. Just provide a nice little edit. Dan, thank you so much for joining. You can follow Dan on Twitter at Dan Hayes MLB. Dan, I'll see you later this week. Pumped to see you in the Twin Cities. We will talk soon, and enjoy the ball. Enjoy the ball, Dan. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You guys are listening to 9 to Noon. It's Alec Lewis hosting in for some reason for Paul Allen and Nordo alongside Max Fuller, who's doing a phenomenal job. We will be back to talk Timberwolves with John Krawczynski, Johnny Athletic, next. Thank you guys for listening.
Want to hear from you. Send us your draft-related talkbacks all day long. If you are selected as our draft talkback of the day, you'll win a pair of passes to the Miller Lite Vikings draft party. For a full list of details, head over to KFAN.com. Keyword contest. Draft coverage on the Fan is presented locally by Pep's Draft House Pizza.
Good morning. It's Alec Lewis sitting in for Paul Allen alongside Max Fuller in for Eric Nordquist. Don't know why I'm here. April Fool's. It was a nice joke, and feels like doing a school project. I am very excited and honored, really, that Johnny Athletic, John Krawczynski, is going to join us right now to talk some Wolves. It hasn't been quiet, I don't think, over there, John. John, first, thank you. How are you? Nice talking to you.
I'm good, Alec. Like I said on Twitter, I feel like Vince Vaughn in Swingers, a movie that happened before I think both of you guys were born. It's just like, you're all grossed up and you're all grossed up. I'm proud of you, buddy. So let's have some fun.
Yeah, don't know why they put me on here, but they did. So here we are. I'm not going to waste much time. I'm going to hit you with the Vikings question at the end because you know it better than I do somehow. Every Sunday we sit up at U.S. Bank Stadium next to each other, and you see the game like you're. But I mean, it's unbelievable. But we'll start Wolves, and we'll get there. I mean, I'm going to start with the ownership thing. You've covered this thing for a long time. When you first saw the statement and the news first dropped, I mean, what was your reaction?
You know, it was obviously completely. I guess it was surprised and not surprised at the same time. I'll say that because. You know, if you cover this team long enough, you just know that in their DNA, there's just drama. There's dysfunction, there's craziness, there's chaos all the time. And so, you know, I've kind of been conditioned to, you know, when things are going smoothly, when everything seems to be falling into place, you're always trying to look around the corner and see where the goblins are coming. And so, when the statement came down, yes, I mean, I was surprised. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe, you know, Glenn Taylor is actually going there, that he's really going to kind of exercise what he believes are his contractual rights to take this thing back. But at the same time, once I contemplated it for a minute, I was like, you know what? This makes perfect sense. This is exactly the Timberwolves' existence here. And so I better get ready for quite a long and ugly fight that is about to be commencing here.
You wrote a really, really, really good story with Shams Charania at The Athletic. I mean, for my money, it is as all-encompassing and just really impressive just knowing what it takes to do that type of thing. It's with scenes, detail, just straight reporting. Really, really impressive. And I read it last night on the plane and was blown away. I mean, like late in that story, you guys wrote that the purchase agreement, and I believe this is quoted, calls for a mediation and arbitration to resolve disputes. So is that the next step here? What is the next step, and what do you expect might occur?
Yeah, I think so, Alec. I think when you look at the process that is laid out, and so Glenn Taylor has said his position is Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry did not fulfill their obligations of the contract. Therefore, the contract has expired, and he's taken the team back. Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez say, no, we have fulfilled all of the obligations. We are eligible for an extension on the deadline because all we are waiting for is NBA approval, and so we need to get that. And so when you have a dispute like that, this contract calls for an arbitration process. And both sides, but especially the Lowry Rodriguez side, said to us in that story, they've said it elsewhere around the metro area and as well, that they're going to fight this thing as long and as hard as it takes to get resolution. And what that means is the first step in that is to go to an arbitration process. So a neutral third party is going to review the case. It's not a legally binding court situation, but it's arbitration. And so the third party will look at Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez's arguments for why this thing should continue and why they deserve to get that extension and go to the league for approval and be able to lock things down. And then they're also going to look at Glenn Taylor's position and saying that, no, actually they've missed a bunch of benchmarks. So they are in breach of their contract and everything has expired. And then that third party is going to rule in favor of one or the other. That process will likely take months to play out. So if Wolves fans are waiting and expecting in the next several weeks some sort of resolution, I do not expect that to happen. And then after that, who knows? Maybe there could be a lawsuit or something like that as well. But we're in the very early stages of a very long fight that is about to start.
Talking to John Krawczynski, Timberwolves beat writer from The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter at John Krawczynski, as 9 to Noon does. As someone who frequently fakes sick to stay home from school, I think there's a very simple answer to this. You just get Judge Mathis, you get Judge Judy, maybe even Jerry Springer or Maury out of retirement, and get them on the case, depending on how far this drama goes. But on the court, the Wolves took a tough loss to the Bulls last night at home, 109-101. I mean, the Bulls were shooting like it was a Michael Bay movie last night. It was just left and right. It was knocking them down like crazy. Was that more so just hot shooting from the Bulls, or did they schematically expose something on the Timberwolves side defensively?
Yeah, Max, I do think it was just one of those nights in the league that happens where a team just gets hot. I mean, Alex Caruso is a very good three-point shooter, but is he going 6 for 6 to start all the time? No, he's not, and he did that last night. To the Bulls' credit, they knocked down open shots. They moved the ball, generated good looks. But the Wolves, I do think were a little slow, a little step behind. They were not contesting threes as much as they normally do. I think they were a little bit discombobulated early on and were not following the game plan that was out there. And so they just weren't their usual selves defensively. And by the time they did find themselves that way, the Bulls had a great rhythm. They were confident, they were shooting, and it was kind of hard to turn the water off. And so, you know, there are nights like that happen in the league, and it's unfortunate for the Wolves because they're in a battle for that number one seed, and they started the night in number one. Both OKC and Denver win. They fall back to number 3. So it just shows that there's high stakes right now in the league, and you can't afford those nights, but sometimes they do happen. I didn't walking out of that arena. I just thought more so it was the Bulls just hit everything. Vucevic was hitting everything. DeMar DeRozan shot very well, and so that was more of the issue, and it's just one of those nights.
You know, it's interesting. I think it was a week and a half ago, John, or maybe less. I don't know. I lost track of time. Covered the Cavs game at home, and I've watched Rudy for a long time, both on TV and I went to a couple games last year. But I sat in your seat, I guess, on press row.
Luckily, I wasn't there to block your view with the fro.
Correct. No, thank you, Mac. And it's an obvious thing for me to say, but I was just, really blown away by just his activity, Rudy. And he was still nursing the rib. You could tell that night. But part of me just wanted to ask you, what has it been like watching kind of the shift / transition / transformation just to what he's brought from year one here to year 2? And I guess what do you have to add just in terms of the work that he put in to get to the point that he's at in terms of the impact he's making?
Yeah, I think first, the second part first, Alec, Rudy went into last summer knowing that many, many people looked at that performance of last season, particularly the first half of last season, and started to say, hey, man, this guy, he's on the wrong side of 30. He is going to be coming off of a cliff. He's washed up. This is a big man. Big men age poorly in the league often, and now Rudy is in his decline. And Rudy is the kind of player who is very aware of the discourse around him, for good or bad. And he uses that as fuel for, for everything in his life. And so last summer, he's always in good shape, but I think that he went into his off-season training and then into the World Cup really determined to show everyone that last year was not about him aging out of the league. It was about him being injured at the start of the year and then also needing some time to click with the new environment. And so he came into training camp this season in remarkable shape, very healthy, and most importantly, on the same page with all of his teammates,
sure,
coaches. And so I think that was huge. And what you see, the thing that I've appreciated that I didn't before about Rudy Gobert, watching him nightly, is it really, I always heard Utah Jazz people say, oh, you don't really realize the impact that Rudy makes until you watch him every night. And I'm like, yeah, but he can't catch the ball, yeah, he does, but he can't shoot. How good really is he? And honestly, it's been remarkable to watch it. He is so impactful defensively and offensively with his screening, with the spaces that he eats up, with everything that's going on that, I'm one of those guys now. I'm the one saying, well, yeah, don't let a little clumsiness fool you right now, because he just does. He's so important to them and so consistent for them that he might be their most important player. Everyone loves Ant, but what Rudy brings on a nightly basis is really something, and you really have to watch it nightly to appreciate it.
That's so true, John. And we only got 8 games to go on in this spectacular regular season. It's been one of the most fun. As a Timberwolves fan, it's been one of the most fun seasons, maybe the most fun season that I can recall in my lifetime. And we don't want to overlook those last 8 regular season games, because obviously it's a dogfight for that number 1 seed in the Western Conference. But the Wolves will make the playoffs. The fan has learned the Wolves are pretty much guaranteed to make the playoffs. So what do you think about the matchups right now? And I get the West is extremely volatile right now. We have no idea what the playoff matchups are going to look like until probably that last regular season game. But what would be the most ideal matchup for the Wolves, and what would be the least ideal matchup for the Wolves in your opinion?
Yeah, Max, you're right. Like, the Wolves could be first, they could be third. They're not going to drop to fourth, I don't think.
No, I don't think it's possible.
So I think they're in the top 3. And so, but also, when you look at where they're at in the bottom, and from that 6 to 8 range, there's like 6 different teams that could be in that spot as well. So it's going to be really crazy down the stretch here to see who ends up where. In terms of who I think that they should try to avoid, Dallas is on fire right now. Now, I really like how they match up against the Mavericks in terms of having perimeter defenders to go at Luka and Kyrie, but they just are playing so well that you just worry about that matchup. I think the other one that you worry about is New Orleans, and because they've just handled the Wolves in the regular season, and there just seems to be a real bad matchup for them. Who I would love to see them play Sacramento. They're a little beat up, and I think that the Wolves can handle that. I would love to see them play the Clippers, honestly. I don't think the Clippers can turn on a switch the way that they think they can, and I just don't think that they're competitive enough to beat the Wolves. So anyone outside of that, I'd love to see them play the Warriors. I don't think they have enough talent, honestly, besides Steph. The Lakers I would worry about a little bit too, just because they shoot a million free throws and they are big, and so that would be more of a dogfight. And
you don't want to be the last chapter in LeBron's documentary where it's like he had one more in him and he was the 8th seed that upset the number 1 seed. You don't want to be that.
You absolutely don't want that. You know how the refs are going to call those games,
right?
And it's you already get just frustrated knowing like that's the way it's going to shake out. So I think it'd be best if they're maybe the 2nd seed, and if they can get Sacramento in that first round, that would be ideal for them.
I'm surprised to hear you say Sacramento. Is it more so because of the injuries? Because I've thought the Kings have played really well against the Wolves this season.
Yeah, they have. They played well against them, but I do think the injuries, because if Malik Monk, if he's out, Malik huge. Monk's the guy that's tore them up.
That's true. That's very true.
A lot, and I just think also like it's easier for a team like Sacramento, in one game here or there throughout a season to kind of catch the Wolves the way they can with some good shooting, spreading them out, running them around, that sort of thing. But I just think in a series, when you have the ability to really game plan and adjust game in and game out to them, I just think that the Wolves' size is going to just be too much for the Kings to overcome on a series basis. So I think, it'd be a 5-game, maybe a 6-game series, but I think the Wolves just over the course of a long series would inflict their will on them and kind of cruise into the next round. But certainly health, it provides a lot in that, with Monk hurt, with Kevin Huerter out as well. I just think that they're not deep enough to go with the Wolves right now.
John, last one, I'll get you out of here. You texted me last night that Josh McCown was at Target. Yeah. He was there. So it's a 2-parter. The first one's much more important than the second. Just how'd the hair look? It's some of the best hair I've ever seen in person. And then 2, I'm sure he gave you the scoop on the quarterback they're picking. So please tell us and inform us their entire draft plan, please, and thank you.
Yeah, the hair was immaculate, first of all. Like, it didn't even move, but it still flowed somehow. It has this flow to it without moving that's just breathtaking, frankly. And he did tell me, but he made me promise to wait until the day of the draft to reveal it. So for those fans out there, subscribe to The Athletic in the next month, and you will see the answer on draft day, and we will tell you what happens before it does. I promise you that.
That is really good. I'm looking forward to getting on the byline with you on that information. Yes. So I appreciate it. No, Johnny Athletic, thank you so much for hopping on. It's been fun. Hopefully you get a second to rest, but you're too good at reporting that you probably won't. Thank you for hopping on. Thanks for letting us bother you on this April Fool's Day, and be good. I'll see you soon.
Sounds good, Alec. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me, guys, and enjoy the rest of the show. That's awesome, man.
Appreciate it, John.
Next Timberwolves game, by the way, tomorrow night, home game against the Houston Rockets. Tip off around 7 p.m., and you can hear that on the free iHeartRadio app on the Timberwolves channel.
I feel like we just went that whole segment, and Anthony Edwards was mentioned once.
Right.
I mean, why did I do that? It's just like who gave me this job? Doesn't make any
There's
sense.
so much going on with the Wolves that we could have went 3 segments with Johnny Athletic.
Unbelievable. And Anthony Edwards, I mean, the locker room after the game, it was. I mean, this guy is such a legend. It's Alec Lewis in for Paul Allen. Max Fuller in for Eric Nordquist. We're going to wrap up the show in the final hour with I mean, it's football. I'm going all in. Vikings draft. We're going to get Courtney Cronin to talk a little bit about the Bears, and then Matt Miller in his 7-round mock draft. Stay with us. Good morning. It's 9 to noon. Hope you're having a great Monday.